International Radio Tours broadcasting program is designed to assist artists, writers, producers, musicians, published authors, and organizations promoting their work throughout the world. To learn more, visit online at internationalradiotours.org.
Welcome and good afternoon. We are live on XRQK Los Angeles and Airtime America. I am your host, Lady Selah Sujuris, and I am hosting for International Radio Tours. Now, it's a privilege to be here today because I do not normally host for International Radio Tours, but it was a special request, and I'm very happy to be here today. Today we are featuring Some Nautical Tales by Captain Wilbur Vantine, who is not only a gentleman, but he's a very interesting historian. Now, he had the opportunity of taking many sea voyages throughout his career and lifetime, and he biographed these voyages, which were very much a significant part of American history. So I, being a history buff and a fan of Captain Vantine's work, I'm very happy to host this show with Captain Vantine. Welcome to the program, Captain Vantine. It's so nice to be able to work with you again.
Well, thank you, and I'm very glad to be here, and you sure do a great job with what you're doing.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate your compliments. And normally, and to let our listeners know, Captain Vantine and I are familiar with each other. We have worked for the past few years on radio programs, but on different programs through Storytellers Campfire, and we did some on Blog Talk Radio and other sources. So we have worked together in the past. So it's nice to be able to meet back up and catch up with each other again and kind of get some interesting stories out of Captain Vantine. So how are things going in Texas? I know here in the Pacific Northwest, Captain Vantine, we're dealing with some high levels of heat. How are you faring over there?
Well, it's hot here. It was 102, I believe, yesterday here, but we've had a little breeze, and this is the time of year it's going to do that normally. So
yes, so you've been able to stay cool,
what's expected.
Mm-hmm.
Thank goodness for air conditioning.
Yes, that's in the Pacific Northwest. Actually, it's not very popular to see them in houses, but especially the older ones. However, people are putting them in. I notice that when the stores load up, they sell out very quickly. So people are starting to do that more here. But everybody drink lots of water and stay hydrated and refreshed. So we have a wonderful program lined up for today, and I'm really looking forward to Captain Vantine sharing his stories. His book, Some Nautical Tales, it's a wonderful book. One of my favorite features about the book is, I believe there's, 150 images in the book? Is that right?
Yes.
Or a little over? Yes. And he really outlines not just the ships that he worked on, but people who were important, all a part of his history throughout his whole life. So, without further ado, we're gonna let Captain Vantine share a little bit of his background and information on. We just want to hear some of the highlights of your career, and then after that, we'll take a commercial break and we'll stories in the book. So, can you share with us a little bit about your career history?
Sure. Well, I was born in 1925, and the Big Depression occurred in 1929. So, at age 5, my family had to make big adjustments. Of course, I only have vague recollections of that time, but I remember we moved from a big house to a small house and had to economize a great deal. My father was able to keep his job, but they cut his pay in half and they skipped a month's pay, so that was a bit of a handicap. But anyway, I grew up in Missouri and Kansas and somewhat in Texas. And when World War II started, I was living in Missouri, in the very central part of the U.S., and Pearl Harbor was, it was just a tremendous blow. It was a tremendous loss to our prestige and self-confidence that we were losing everywhere. And it looked like we might lose that war. It sure looked bad in the beginning. I was 18 years old when Pearl Harbor occurred, and so I was going to go off to war, and I had a choice where to go if I volunteered ahead of time before being drafted, and one of the choices was the Merchant Marine, and I decided to go that way. A friend of mine had been in the Merchant Marine Cadet Corps and was home on his leave after completing his sea time, and he told me about the program, and I applied for that, and I did not get accepted for a period of time, so I didn't want to be drafted, so I joined the Merchant Marine and went to their training facility in Sheepshead Bay, Brooklyn. And the day I left to go to Sheepshead Bay, they mailed acceptance to my home address for the Merchant Marine Cadet Corps. It took me a couple of months to get turned loose and over where I wanted to be, but then later that summer I got transferred to the Merchant Marine Cadet Corps. Instead of sending me to the nearby training school at Sheepshead Bay, I mean, from Sheepshead Bay, it was a short distance to the Merchant Marine Cadet Corps school on Long Island. Instead of sending me there, they sent me back home to Missouri and then down to Pass Christian, Mississippi to train. And there was a 3-month very accelerated training program there. And then the program was to go to be assigned to a ship for a minimum of 6 months, and they sent me to the nearby facilities in New Orleans, and I joined a ship there. And this was in 1943 in the fall. So it was a Liberty ship called the Davy Crockett, and so we sailed from New Orleans to the Panama Canal. That was a very dangerous passage because the submarines were having a field day. They called it the happy time, the Germans did, because we had no naval facilities to protect the ships, and they were sent out on their own, no escorts, and they were easy targets for the submarines. But anyway, we made it safely to Panama. And we arrived just at sunset, and they told us to go back to sea 20 miles while they closed the entrance to with a submarine net. And we came back the next morning, and the night after that, for 3 nights in a row, a German submarine found that happy hunting ground of the ships being sent back out to sea 20 miles, and they sank ships there 3 nights in a row. But anyway, we missed that.
Wow, and, how many ships do you know?
Well, that submarine captain later wrote a book. He had to leave because he ran out of torpedoes. He had to go back and get more. But we had almost no navy, and the ships were running up and down the East Coast without any escorts, and the city lights were on, silhouetting the ships so the submarines could sink them at nighttime. And the merchant marine had a casualty rate that was higher than much. In fact, it's almost double what the armed forces had. We had a fatality rate of 1 in 25. And
wow, that is high. How about you, Captain Vantine? I mean, as you're watching and observing all of this that's happening around you, what were you thinking? Do you remember? What were you feeling?
Well, we were very conscious. Our lower holds on that voyage were full of drums of aviation gasoline, so we got torpedoed. It would probably be a big fire and explosion. And,
exactly.
But we swung out our lifeboats and lashed them against what we call puddings so that they would be ready for rapid lowering if we got torpedoed. And we most of us were hoping with a torpedo hitting the engine room where it wouldn't catch fire, but the guys in the engine room probably had mixed emotions about that. but anyway, my first foreign port was Cristobal Canal Zone in the adjacent Panamanian city of Colon, and in those days that was a real wild place, as bars were in all the seaports. But I got an education there that I might have missed otherwise. I found out about bee girls. I was buying this sweet young girl drinks, and every time I'd buy her a drink, they'd give her a plastic token about the size of a silver dollar, which she dropped in her purse. And she was giving me encouragement. I had hopes of getting to know her better before the evening was over. And I ran out of money about 11 p.m., and she promptly moved to another table. And so I learned about bee girls. I went back to the
wow.
ship sad, but
so you were getting quite an education all the way around.
Right. At age 18, I found out about bee girls.
I see. So I'm curious, had you graduated from high school at the time you went into the cadet training?
When I was in the 3rd grade, there was a problem. I was I went to the 3rd grade in 3 states: Texas, Kansas, and Missouri. And even before that, there was a problem. I was flunking in the 1st and 2nd grade because I couldn't learn to read, and my folks were real worried about me. And we were living in Nevada, Missouri, and they went to the considerable expense at the time of going to see a specialist in Kansas City, about 100 miles away. And they made an appointment for me there, and this specialist examined me and pronounced there's no hope for this child. He's got air pockets in his head. That was me. And my mother didn't think that was right because I could memorize things, but I couldn't read. So my 2nd grade teacher suggested that they check my vision, and that was the problem. I remember that first eye exam, I didn't even know the alphabet. They had to show me pictures of camels and rabbits and horses. And after that, I did fine. But anyway, the 3rd grade, I had an uncle that died in Texas, so we went to the funeral, and I ended up staying there for 2 or 3 months with my biological father, going to school there, and then we moved to Kansas and then to Missouri, and anyway, my 3rd grade was kind of mixed up, so they decided me to repeat it, which meant a problem later on. When I was 18, I'd only finished 3 years of high school, but the war was on, so I wasn't going to get to go to the senior year. But I got real good grades in school. I was always almost straight A's, And I'd taken an extra math and science course each year.